Good afternoon, Dr. Brian Peters.
Good afternoon.
As I've said so many times, I absolutely love doing these podcasts with you, the science of engagement. Now we're going to be spending most of our time in subsequent episodes talking about the value of building out a strong engagement program and what it means to the bottom line. I mean, how we can actually, nuts and bolts, increase your revenue, decrease your cost, make your company more successful. So, a question that I get a lot of times is, is there an ROI of engagement? Is there an ROI of feedback? Um, and the answer to those questions is a resounding yes. Brian has done a lot of research in this and has read a lot of research papers and studies about other people. So there is beyond a shadow of a doubt a bottom line benefit and an ROI to building out a strong program and platform in your company to increase engagement and knowledge of what the company does and knowledge of other people and how to work more collaboratively with other people. Yes, 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 yes. And we're going to be talking about what the research says in subsequent podcasts. And we're going to be giving very specific advice and instructions on how to build out a strong engagement platform and how to increase your revenue by doing so and how to decrease your cost and build a stronger organization. But before we even start on this introductory episode, we will be throwing out a kind of obvious observation. Even if you did not read a single research paper on the value of engagement or the ROI of engagement, surely it would make sense if you're trying to decrease cost and increase revenue to go ask all of your people, not just a few, but all of them, hey, since you work here, do you have any ideas on how we can increase our revenue or decrease our costs since you're on the front line in many different departments doing many different jobs? I think we can say with certainty, can't we, Brian, that if you asked all of your people that question, someone somewhere, even if it's only one person, is going to have an idea that can increase your revenue and decrease your cost. And that in and of itself would generate an ROI. Therefore, entire argument is made, we need engagement. What do you say to that as an introductory point only?
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess when you're a business leader, sometimes it can be difficult to want to invest in things like engagement because it can be harder to see a tangible impact, right? Like it, or at least in the short term, it depends on how long you're willing to wait, right? Because if you say, okay, I want to implement engagement strategy today, and by the end of the year, I want to see us be more profitable. I mean, is that possible? Maybe, but it takes time to completely change the culture and all of that. So you have to give it a little bit of time to work. But to your point, right, when you start seeing people coming up with ideas, creativity, you see higher levels of performance, all of that, you will see impact to your profitability, and you will see a return if you're going to invest in that. It's just you have to look at it maybe at a longer time horizon than a month or a quarter. It might be more of like a year, or you track it quarter over quarter for a couple of years, and you will see that improve.
Yeah, I have begun to read the research material that you put together for me that you used in writing your dissertation, or some of the articles that speak to the ROI of engagement. Some of them are very dense, a lot of statistics and graphs and flowcharts, and some of them are high level. But even with the dense uh, scientific peer-reviewed articles and the more mass market articles, there doesn't seem to be any dispute that there are a lot of benefits to improving the customer experience, what customers experience in dealing with your people once you start a um, engagement program to get people more engaged with their jobs. It almost always has a ripple effect into the customer experience, which obviously is going to improve your business because they're going to like you more, shop more, and buy more things. Why is that? How does the act of improving engagement inside of your company, why does that have such a profound ripple effect out into your customer experience and how they feel about the way that you're treated?
So when you look at engagement, at the core of engagement, you have sort of these three like sub areas. You have the absorption, dedication, and vigor, and you can actually measure those three things, right? So, absorption in one's work, dedication to your work and to the organization, and then vigor, like being excited about what you're doing. And so when you have all of that, you have people performing at their very best because they're excited about the job. They are completely immersed in that role and they want to see the company be successful. They want to see their team be successful. They want to be successful. And so when you have all of that, you'll have like, sales reps, customer service reps, things like that, providing better service to your end customer, right? So then you see things like higher customer retention, right? Because they're getting a better service, they're getting better quality. You're having less errors that are occurring, right? So if you're I think in the last episode or one of the previous episodes, I talked about the company that I ran when we're doing like fulfillment. Well, when you have people that are completely absorbed in what they're doing and dedicated to what they're doing, they're going to be more careful with the way that they are packaging things and making sure the right orders go out. And so you will see greater customer satisfaction in those things. So it's essentially what you are doing by increasing engagement is you are optimizing everybody in that individual role, which means that they are working more efficiently. They're working overall just better. And your customers will see that. Whoever you're servicing will see that, will feel that.
Yeah, because looking at some of the graphs and flowcharts and some of the articles that I read, I had a huge aha moment, and that moment was when I realized, a lot of people think about engagement as it's kind of a warm and fuzzy type stuff that people are going to be happier at work, and I have a friend at work, and I'm really happy and things like that. But what these articles are clearly getting at or clearly indicating is this much broader than that. It flows over into customer engagement, and the reason seems to be that, as we all know, just intuitively we know that, and has having been in consulting most of my life, I know this, that your people will treat your customers exactly the way you treat them. There doesn't seem to be any question about that whatsoever. It's a pretty simple mantra that everyone understands if they've been in business for any length of time. That if you treat your people well and they feel engaged and respected and valued and making a difference, then they're going to treat your customers really well, and your customers are going to feel great. So all of the experiences are combined. And the net result of that is you become more successful, not just because your people are more interested in what they're doing in the workplace and paying more attention to the job, which they are, but there's more than that. Their happiness spills over into the customer experience, and customers are buying more and more loyal to your company and staying more. So there's a lot of different things that are going on that a level of engagement is affecting. And I think a lot of people completely miss that. Is that
Yeah.
not another huge value add for building out a strong engagement program?
Yeah, and I think like when you talk about, and we've talked about this often, what the the happiness, the fluffy stuff, that's all like a byproduct of having an engaged workforce, right? What you're doing is not necessarily doing it to make your workforce happy. That isn't necessarily the goal, but it is a byproduct of those efforts, right? When you put in the things to increase engagement, right? When you provide autonomy, when you give people you push people, right? You give them the responsibilities to help them grow. You hold people accountable. You coach them. You communicate. You do all of these things that we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about. You start to increase engagement. You start to increase the level of happiness, right? The happiness is again one of those byproducts, and the other byproducts are all the things that you just talked about, right? It goes out into your customer base and throughout the organization, right? Because it's both internal and external customers. Sometimes when we think about customers, we're only thinking about the person buying the product. But for somebody like myself, who I've worked in HR for over a decade, my customers are not the company's customers. Like my customers are the employees and the managers, right? And so my level of engagement also impacts the culture, because if I'm more engaged, I'm providing a better service to the internal customers. They're then going to hopefully, that'll also help with the engagement, the culture, all of that, which will help the end user. So it helps both internally and externally. And again, is incredibly important. And even if you don't necessarily care about making people happy, again, if you do just the engagement stuff to get the added organizational outcomes, positive organizational outcomes, again, one of the byproducts is you'll have a happier workforce. If you think about yourself, right, when you're happy, when you're excited about something and you're working with somebody, it's much easier to go above and beyond for that person, to provide white glove service for that person, to problem solve better, right? When you are completely detached from it, when you're unhappy, you don't have the mental resources to do that, right? We only have so much mental and emotional resource to apply to something. And if it's all depleted because you're just miserable in what you do, you can't give any of those, you don't have any of those resources to give to somebody else. It's like a depressed person that struggles just to get out of bed, and you tell them, hey, we'll just go take a walk and be happier. It's like, well, I don't have the mental resources available to me to get out of the house. Like, it's hard for me just to get out of bed. I've exhausted all my mental, emotional resources to get out of bed. I'm not going to go and do that step above to make myself healthier or whatever, because I don't have those resources anymore. It's similar in an organization. If I'm completely disconnected from it, I don't have those resources available to give 110%, right? Like I can't give that extra piece because I don't have it to give.
Right. Well, let me ask you this just to kind of give people just a high level idea of some of the things that they can look forward to if they develop a strong engagement platform. And in the future, as we know, you and I are both working as consulting partners with a really exciting group that has been founded, Feedback Consulting Partners, which has a team of just some outstanding consultants across the country that are working with us now on these issues. And soon we will, be inviting some of our colleagues to talk about the research that they've done on engagement and feedback for the last 30 years and the numbers and the data analytics and the regression analyses and all these kinds of things. And you are our science guy. Like, you're not only a consultant, but you will be helping to build out a lot of the research and the statistics to help companies track like the monetary benefit of the engagement platforms that we will be creating. But even before we get into that, what can you tell our listeners about some of the high level benefits, 5 to 10 or whatever, that you can areas that you can expect to see improvement in immediately once you start a strong engagement platform? What are just some of the low hanging fruit? You're going to see greater collaboration, you're going to see increased revenue, just all of the things that the research says these areas will begin to improve dramatically if you create an engagement platform. Just kind of as a teaser for next time, what are some of the large areas that they will see improvement in?
So one of the things, you touched on a couple of them there, right? So collaboration, absolutely, right? You'll have people that are more willing to collaborate. The communication, generally, when you're implementing an engagement strategy, communication is a huge piece of that. Like, how are we disseminating information? How are we communicating? And then, so when you start to do that, you see greater collaboration, communication among teams, but also like with clients, right? Like if you're in a professional services space, like you need to you should partner with your clients, and you should collaborate with them to solve problems, right? And so when you start building that as a culture, you'll see that in other areas. Creativity is huge, like creativity slash innovation. When you have a more dedicated, excited, absorbed workforce, people will come up with creative ideas. And then again, when you have that open communication that you're implementing as part of that strategy, people feel comfortable coming up with those ideas, and helping the organization. And so now the organization gets to benefit. If you have a company that has 10,000 employees, well, those are 10,000 minds that you can tap into, right? And so with a proper strategy and really focusing on these things, that's a huge resource that you can take experience and knowledge and all of this. Now, are all 10,000 going to have ideas or be wanting to share those? No. But even if you get, 10% of that, that's still a significant amount of people that can help you drive that business forward, which then ends up into that whole profitability thing. And so I think it's important to distinguish between necessarily increased revenue and profitability, because yes, you'll see increased revenue. That doesn't necessarily mean you would see net profits off of that, right? If your costs don't go down or whatever, or go up, right? If your costs go up as your revenue goes up, well, then your profitability more or less stays the same. But when you focus on engagement, you get higher performance. So the output per hour worked is higher, right? So then what does that do? Your costs ultimately go down. If I'm making widgets, if I can get somebody engaged and a disengaged worker was doing 100 widgets per hour and I can get them up to 150 per hour, my cost of goods sold goes down. So for that same sales that I have, my profit goes up. Even without making any additional sales, right? My profit will go up. So even if your net sales are the same, you would see profitability increase. However, when you have an engagement strategy, you generally see your revenue also go up, because you're also going and getting those clients. You're also selling more, right? You're doing those things on the sales side of things that will help drive your revenue. So you're doing both at the same time, right? You're driving costs down, you're increasing revenue. So overall, your profitability is better, like the dollars at the end. And Gallup did a survey using their Q12 engagement platform, which, whether you like it or not, that's what they use, right? And so they did a meta-analysis of their uh, of the data set that they have. And I think it's good to look at Gallup because they have a huge data set.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they saw profitability increase anywhere from 1% to 4%, right? So now that might not seem like a lot, but if you're bringing in millions, tens of millions of dollars a year right now, imagine increasing that 1% to 4%. Right. And that's just what they're seeing. And the trouble that you have with a lot of these research papers is they'll talk about sort of the underlying things that improve organizational outcomes like revenue, profitability. But they don't tie enough that monetary side where you actually see the number. Like, what is the percentage that's going up? Gallup's one of the only ones that I've found thus far that actually puts that number there. So one of the things that we talked about is that's one thing that we want to research, and we'll obviously share with the audience when we get there, is tracking that sort of that monetary value. Like how is that moving, so we can put a dollar amount to it. So anyway, so you're going to see increase not only in revenue but profitability, right? So those are two distinct categories in my mind that are important, though. You'll see an increase in performance, which is going to ultimately impact that profitability. You're going to see an increase in creativity and innovation. You're going to see greater collaboration, right? So just those 5 things alone, I don't know that there's a leader out there that would say that those things aren't worth chasing, right? Like, if you don't see that, if you don't see how those, at least one or multiple of those things, are worth going after, you probably shouldn't be in that leadership role, because you're blind to some very important things.
Yes, I was trying to make, well, I guess I'm making two arguments. I'm making a good to great argument, and I'm also making a horrible great to argument, which you just
Mm-hmm.
pointed out. It's the same thing as when you're doing competency assessment and analysis of high performing people. Like a classic example that we use all the time is, this has been researched exhaustively, is what it means to be a great salesperson, which high performing salespeople, we have competency assessments which very reliably predict the traits of high performing salespeople, right? We've discussed this many times. Just huge
Well,
sample
yeah, and
size.
so in that meta-analysis you're just referencing, again, between the bottom and the top quartile, they saw an 18% difference in productivity of salespeople, right? And so imagine if you could have 18%, if that much more productive sales team, what would that do for your revenue numbers?
Exactly. It gets even higher than that from if you consider also the competency assessments that have been done with very large sample sizes,
Mm-hmm.
in banking and other areas. People who score great on the traits that we know are associated with high performing salespeople sometimes bring in 3 times more revenue than people who are merely good.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, taking the time to carefully select people and also build an environment in which they can thrive. And we talked about this last time. You have to have both, right? You have
Yeah.
to hire the people that have um, the traits of excellence. They're bringing in what we know are the traits of high performing people, but you can't just stop there. You have to bring them into a culture of excellence where they can thrive.
Yeah, or you'll
Because,
kill all of that benefit that you just hired, right? So,
ironically, and I talked about this in my book, How to Hire a Champion, early on about the importance of your culture and what it means. And one of the things that I brought out is that I was interviewing one of the guys that was in charge for recruiting for one of the regions of the uh, Marine Corps, and you're a Marine vet. I mean, you should know this. It's like, well, what is it about? Why is the Marine Corps able to attract so many people that are outstanding, that end up being outstanding warriors? Because we're the Marines, meaning that people who are Marines are really proud to say, I'm not just anybody, I am a Marine. And that means something.
yeah.
So obviously, the Marines have created a culture where not just anybody can be a Marine, right? They don't take just anybody. So being able to say, I'm a Marine, people are very proud of that. And so as I was pointing out, and I interviewed this Marine recruiting leader and a lot of other people in corporations, you cannot put a price tag on your culture. Your culture must be a place where high performers feel proud to mention your name and are proud to say, I work for this company and we're a great company.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
they can't say, you're not going to keep a high performer in your company if they don't feel proud to be working for you. They're just going to leave. So you must it's not good enough to just hire high performing people, which you should try to do that, but you have to have a culture of excellence so that they feel that they want to stay because they're proud of where they're working. And the only way, and I'll just try and end this can be a yes or no question, and then we'll come back next time digging in deeper to a lot of these variables about how you can improve, a lot of these areas, for example, that Gallup was talking about. Is it not true that if you want to maintain a culture of excellence that high performers want to stay in, is it not an absolute requirement that you build a strong engagement platform to increase the level of engagement and teamwork and strength and esprit de corps in your company? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And you're saying that as a doctor of organizational industrial psychology who wrote his dissertation on engagement, you're saying that the answer to the question is yes.
Yes. And I do really, before we stop this episode, and I just, because I really like your analogy when you talk about the Marine Corps, and I just want to point something out with that because we've talked about this in other episodes. So you mentioned esprit de corps, right? Like in the Marines, you have that. Like that is, you are from day one. You are when you go to boot camp, you're not treated well. So right, like I don't necessarily recommend that organizations treat people like boot camp, but the Marine Corps does a really good job at making you proud to be a Marine, and it's even more obvious when you get into infantry Marines, which is what I was, right? Infantry Marines are super proud to be infantry Marines. Like we feel that we are the top of the top. The only people that are better than us might be special forces, and that might be debatable among some Marines, right? But I would give that to special forces, but you also see that among special forces as well. And I will say Marines are a good example. Marines are spec ops because I've been around a lot of other branches, and none of them, as far as that dedication, that pride, are anywhere close to the Marines. And I'll know other people, that are in different branches will say the same thing. They'll just say that it's just different, right? And I point all of that out to say, to your point before, a lot of managers I see are afraid to hold people accountable because they're afraid of having disengagement and having retention issues. Because if I go to somebody and say, hey, you're not performing this right or whatever, they'll just be mad and leave. But if you look at like the Marine Corps as an example, that's just not true. Or special forces is not true. People are joining it because it's hard and they want to be a part of something where they can be what they feel to be elite. And I think the same thing happens in organizations. Where you really get disengaged workers is when you have your high performers seeing that you're allowing all the low performers just to stay there and nothing ever changes, right? And so they're like, what am I doing all this hard work for when nobody else is with me? And the Marines, everybody's with you, right? Like, you are the top, you're going to be pushed, you're going to get through it, and it builds that greater team. And so I think you can take some of that wisdom into the workforce. I'm not saying go in and do a boot camp style, organization. What I'm saying is push people to be their best, and people will be excited about that. If you allow them to go down to sort of the mediocrity or like just be lazy, you're not going to get the best out of them, and you're going to kill your high performers. So that's what I really like you bringing up, like the Marine example, is because it's a good example of push people and you will get the most out of them. And that's what the Marines do.
Okay, so I have something I want to add before we leave.
Perfect.
So, I wrote this book called How to Hire a Champion, which is now a must read at a lot of organizations. It's used as a recruiting manual at a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it's got some pretty awesome reviews on Amazon that say if you're going to read one book on recruiting, you should probably read this, because it talks about character, and character is really what you're looking for. And if you only can read one recruiting book, you should probably read How to Hire a Champion. And so I am going to say that if you don't have the time to read this entire book, or you have no interest in checking it out or buying it or reading it, I can kind of cut to the chase, and I can read 3 sentences from the epigraph in the opening. And this is what it says. And tell me, as a Marine vet and a doctor of engagement, if this makes sense to you. Champions, and I think I read these lines to your buddy, the Marine recruiting leader, and he was like, hell yeah. I said, champions are not as hard to find as some people may lead you to believe. Usually, you can see champions coming from a mile away. They're the ones who still have something to prove. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
Still have something to prove. And just hang on, because I want you to close this out. Like in my entire lifetime of working in this, okay, and being the author of How to Hire a Champion and working with corporations and whatever, champions and high performers are people who still have something to prove. They have a burning desire to prove something to you. It could be, you can throw me in the hottest boiling pit of mud, in the hottest temperature in, North Carolina, California. I don't care, but I'm going to crawl through that mud. I'm going to crawl off that rope sling, and I'll be damned if I'm not going to become a Marine, because I'm going to prove it to you. Now that is a champion. It's the same thing with other jobs. I will not be stopped, but they have something they want to prove to you. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say, I think if you don't give them anything to prove, and you don't give them a way to prove themselves, and you don't reward them for proving what they wanted to prove because you gave it to them, you can forget it. You're not going to attract champions, and you're not going to keep them. Now, do you think, as a doctor of engagement, an industrial psychologist, and a Marine vet, that I'm on the money with that?
Yeah, I do. And I think if you combine that, so I personally, and I don't know if we agree on this, and we don't have to get into it in this episode, it might be better for future, but I think that anybody, if you combine that with Jim Collins' notion of putting the right people in the right seats, right, on the bus, right, when we're working, we really want to focus on the right people in the right seats. And we talk about in other episodes like competencies, right, and evaluating that. If you can get the right people in the right seats, you can create champions even if it's not obvious in the beginning, right? Like if you can get them, if you can coach, you can do that. I see more organizations though destroy champions by not doing the right things than creating champions, right? And I think if you can create a culture where you can really identify people and what their strengths are and put them in the right seats, and then create a culture that focuses on people and engagement, you will not only keep your champions, but you'll create new ones.
Heck yeah. I was going to say something else, but I'll just say heck yeah. Okay. Sam, fist bump. I'm giving it to you, man. So this was awesome. It's awesome to talk to you as usual. I'm so excited. I want to talk for another hour, but I know we can't. So why don't we come back next time, and we'll start drilling in more to those areas, the low hanging fruit, where if you show the kind of champion mindset and the tenacity and the desire to prove yourself, and you have people that actually showed that they care about you, and they build a culture where you can thrive, that you're going to kill it. And there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, but let's talk about that next time.
Perfect. All right. Well, as always, David, this has been a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Awesome, sir. Dr. Brian Peters, thank you for another great episode, and can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Science of Engagement podcast. Let's keep the conversation going down in the comments. If you like this episode, please hit the like button, and be sure to hit subscribe to stay up to date on the science of keeping your people engaged without the fluff. See you in the next one.